You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, episode number 201. People cry not because they are weak, it is because they have been strong for too long. Johnny Depp.
Broadcasting from a dark, windowless room in Hollywood when we really should be working on that next draft.
It's the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast,
Showing you the craft and business of screenwriting while teaching you how to make your screenplay bulletproof. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by three categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie's going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. Today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle Pro, our private and growing community for filmmakers and screenwriters. It was created for film creatives like you to meet, network, and support each other, learn from film industry experts, and to get the answers to your burning questions and more. The journey in this business is rough. There is no guarantee to success, but your chances of reaching your goals dramatically improve when you find others who are on the same journey as you and you work together towards a common goal. That is why I put together IFH Pro. Inside, you'll get professional networking, private and safe spaces to discuss the film business, access to advanced tools and education, up-to-date education, exclusive content not available publicly, access to IFH Pro workshops, webinars, special guests, and so much more. If you want to check it out, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/pro. Well, guys, today we have an amazing story by screenwriter and producer David Kessler. Now, David's first movie out the gate starred one of the biggest movie stars in the world, Johnny Depp. He wrote, produced, and got the movie rights for the new film Minamata. Now, David and I have a frank conversation about what it was like working with Johnny, but more importantly, how he was able to get the movie rights and life rights to the film's subject, Eugene Smith. It is a fascinating conversation about looking for things in the public domain, where you can find inspiration for writing, how to actually get these life rights from and movie rights from people who own IP, and much more. This is a pretty eye-opening conversation. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with David Kessler. I'd like to welcome to the show David Kessler. How you doing, David?
Great.
Thank you so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate you reaching out to me, man. I get reached out by, as you can imagine, a lot of people want to come on the show, and I'm very blessed with that. But when I saw your story and I saw the films you worked on, and I just found it interesting to see your perspective on the craft, on the business, and so on. So, first question, man, how did you get into this insanity that is the business?
This is my fourth career. So I have to make this one stick.
Okay.
I went to art school. I went to Parsons School of Design. But I was trained to be a designer, but I was always writing on the side. Many years ago, I wrote a short story for an NYU film application, and a friend gave it to a woman who came into her cafe. She was a waitress. And then it turned out that this woman wrote me a letter. So I got a letter, and in the corner it said Janklow and Nesbitt. I was like, oh no, I'm getting sued. I'm gonna have to leave my apartment or something. Like it turns out Mort Janklow is an attorney, and the logo looks very much like a a law firm, but it turned out they are like the biggest literary agency in New York. They represented Michael Crichton. They represented Richard Price, who was my favorite author at the time. So yeah, my journey goes way back. So that was sort of an inkling that maybe I had something that
started that you had
Exactly.
you had some of the juice, some of the magic.
I had some of the juice. Yeah, I think I was still 21. I had just graduated college. But yeah,
wow.
I got rejected by NYU. I don't even know how I could have afforded it, but
So it might have been the best thing for you not to go to NYU, because you might still be carrying around an obscene amount of debt.
probably. But actually, I got to know a lot of NYU people from that time. I was doing film titles for NYU students. So I put like flyers all over NYU, like, hey, I'll do your film titles for $99 or whatever it was. And I got to know some really interesting people. One of the people I got to know, the first film title I did was a guy named Randy Pearlstein. He and his roommate, Eli Roth, later did Cabin Fever.
Wow. Very cool. Now, is it true that you also went to the Fame High School?
I went to the Philly version of the Fame High School.
So you went to the Fame High School, the Philly version.
Yes.
But while you were there, some of your students that you went to school with, is it true you went to school with Boyz II Men and QuestLove?
Yes.
What was that like, dude? How were they back then?
I think I was bullied by Boyz II Men's like associates freshman year. I remember somebody pushing me down on the roof. We had our playground on the roof because it was in the city. I didn't, and then QuestLove was a year below me. He was Amir Thompson then.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. They were on a different floor, so they had a music floor, and then they had like rehearsal spaces in the basement, that were soundproof. So, but yeah, I mean, I knew sort of Amir in passing, but I don't think he'd remember me.
That's funny, man. That is funny. Now, from what I understand, you also became a stand-up as well.
Yes.
And you did some stand-up work. Now, I've had decades of experience with stand-up, so I know the creature very well.
It is a beast. It is
the stand-up. It is the comedian. The stand-up comedian is their own species. And I the sad clown is very, very true in many cases. What drew you to stand-up? And because look, I was shooting a special once. I was shooting a stand-up special, directing it, and I just got up on the stage with nobody in the audience, just to set up for the camera to like, okay, I'll stand in. And I freaked out just standing there in front of nobody, and I'm like, oh no, I could never. Like it takes such a level of I don't know, courage or insanity to try to go up there and entertain people with a mic for an hour. So what drew you to that insanity? That's even more insane than the film business.
Indirectly, a therapist from Kaiser Permanente drove me to it. I had just gotten to LA. I had moved to LA because I moved here because I met a woman on the World Wide Web, which is what we called it then.
You're surfing the World Wide Web?
Yeah, and that relationship crashed like I think on the 5th day or the 4th day I was here. So I was here for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I just was like depressed. I couldn't get out of bed, and I went to Kaiser, and the therapist was like, you know what? You have no support system. You kind of moved on a whim. I need you to come back next week with a list of classes that you want to take so you can, find some friends and, build the community. So I think 2 minutes before the next session, I was like, stand-up, cooking class, acting class, writing class, dance class. And stand-up was the first thing. And she goes, I think that might be good for you. And then like probably a week and a half later, I was in a stand-up class.
Oh my God. And then you went out and you started doing stand-up now. And you had some success in stand-up a little bit and got some work in writing comedy and so on, right?
I got a manager probably within 20 months of the class. I was signed with Messina Baker. They represented Tim Allen and Drew Carey at the time. So they represented Tim Allen and Drew Carey, and then there was like a bunch of people. There was the A list, and then there was sort of like the E list. I was sort of in the E list. There was no mid talent at the time.
So when you were working in stand-up and working in comedy writing, how did that help you in your dramatic writing that's where you are currently today?
I don't know. It's hard to say. The first script I ever wrote was a biopic, which is now my thing. But I wrote a biopic in the mid-90s about Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Frankie Lyman was the kid who sang Why Do Fools Fall in Love? So that was my first script. So I wrote that in the mid to late 90s. And then I was doing stand-up in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. I don't know. For some reason, the comedy thing, I stopped doing stand-up. But I was still writing romantic comedies and comedy scripts, and it just wasn't sticking. I just, there were some nibbles and some bites, and then all of a sudden I just made this. I think I stopped. Yeah, I stopped all entertainment. I was in the laundry business for a long time, which is career number 3. Right. I was like, because I was in my early to mid 30s, and I was like, okay, I need to grow up. I need to get serious about, trying to stay alive. And and then I did a hard pivot to drama and true stories. And that was the thing that stuck.
But you've been drawn to true stories pretty much ever since. It's kind of like you've kind of niched yourself in that space.
Yeah. I've gotten that sort of a semi reputation as the doctor of broken biopics. There was like I'd gotten a couple or 2 or 3 freelance jobs where producers had come to me with a piece of IP or a book or an idea or a true story, and they're like, "We've had other people work on this, and we have this script, and can you try and fix it?" So
you script doctored a bunch as well.
Yeah, in fact, the director of Minamata hired me to rewrite a script he had called Adidas v. Puma, which was about the 2 brothers who own those companies who were at war with one another for 30 years.
So Adidas and Puma they were brothers, the owners of those companies?
Yeah, one guy's name was Adi Dassler. Adidas.
Got it. Fair
and the other guy was Rudy Dassler. They were the Dassler brothers. And then he founded Puma. So they had a shoe company in the 20s and 30s called the Dassler Shoe Company, and then the World War II kind of split them apart, and then one.
That's an interesting story.
It's an amazing story. I did a page 1 rewrite on that script. Yeah.
Oh, I hope it gets made one day. That would be fantastic.
Me too. My manager called me about a month ago, and she goes, the script you wrote has come back to the agency because they represent directors, and they had it sort of like went out in the world, and it came right back for another client.
It's interesting how that works. It's like, as a writer, you write something or you're hired to write something, and you've no idea what's going to happen to it. You kind of, you pray to the Hollywood gods that someone's going to produce it. And I've said this on the show so many times that I know writers who might have one really popular movie on their resume or actually produced 1 or 2 things, and they're like, oh, they haven't done anything in 10 years. I'm like, no, they've been working nonstop. They've probably written 10 or 15 been paid to write 10 or 15 scripts that just haven't been produced, let alone script doctoring.
Right. Yeah, I had I called a company that owns they manage the estates of rock bands. And I got a guy on the phone, and I said, "Yeah, I've done the Johnny Depp movie Minamata, yada yada yada." And he goes, "What else have you done?" And I go, "Well, being my first movie starring and produced Johnny Depp, I don't think that's too bad.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But he was very quick to dismiss that I only had one.
Right.
You know? But I made that one, but it's not a bad one to start with.
It's not a bad hit to come out with. So let's talk a little bit about Minamata.
Sure.
You are the producer of that as well as the writer of it, one of the writers of it as well, and one of the producers of it. So you're the one who started, you're the one that went out and optioned the book, all that. How did you decide to option the book? How did you option the book? And can you explain to the audience of screenwriters out there and filmmakers who might want to option a book what the process is like?
It was just a few years of crawling over broken glass. That's all it was.
That's it. That's all. Only a couple.
It was really easy. I had known of the photograph. There's a very famous photograph of this Japanese woman bathing her severely disabled and deformed daughter. I knew of that photograph when I was at Parsons because that was in like the best of photojournalism book, the best of Time Life. It's a haunting picture. I don't know if you've seen the.
No, I've seen that picture. I've seen that picture.
Yeah, you've seen the picture. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Oh.
And so that was taken by Eugene Smith, and I thought it was from Hiroshima because it was black and white, and it just felt like it was from long ago, but it was only taken a decade and a half or 2 decades before I was in college. So then, I discovered the story behind the photograph and the story behind Gene Smith. And then I actually got the Minamata book out of the Los Angeles Public Library. Luckily, it's still in circulation because some books you can only get at the downtown library, the reference. So then I have to travel 15 miles and find parking in downtown LA, which I really loathe. But yeah, so then I tracked Mrs. Smith down. Mrs. Smith had a website where she, answered questions about the photographs or if people wanted to license the photographs. So I reached out to her January of 2011, never wrote me back. I tried a full year later, just January 12. I was like, I'm just going to send the same email. And then she wrote me back a few days later. And this was a big leap of faith for her because I'm not Steven Spielberg. I'm not Bob Zemeckis. I'm not Eric Roth. I don't have Munich behind me. I don't have Schindler's List behind me. I was a guy who did stand up and wrote romantic comedies. And had never made a movie before. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge, I owe Mrs. Smith a huge gratitude and a debt for trusting me with her story and her husband's story and the story of the community that they lived in. But yeah, it took 2 years. It was 2 years of, she lives in Japan. She's half Japanese. So it took 2 years of emails and Skype phone calls at midnight and letters back and forth. And sometimes she would, decide, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe this is not something I want to revisit. And it brings up too many bad memories. And then I'd have to reel her back. I think it's a good thing. I think it would be a good thing for the world to be reminded. So it was a year and a half of convincing her. And then it was 6 months of legal wrangling. So yeah, it was 23 months before she signed on the dotted line.
So you were like a dog with a bone for a year and a half, essentially, and did not give up. It did not give up on this process, which is a very important lesson for everyone listening. It doesn't happen overnight. How much are you willing to endure? Because most people would have given up after 6 months. After a couple months, they would have given this lady just doesn't want to do it. It's not for me. Who am I? How did you? I want to ask you. I'm assuming during that year and a half of you trying to convince this lady to give you the rights to her husband's amazing story and book,
and her story,
and her story as well. There had to be moments that you said to yourself in the quiet of the night, who do you think you are?
how dare you think you could even attempt to do something like that? There had to have been some negative talk, some imposter syndrome flying around. How did you overcome that?
I have a little like sticky on my computer, but the digital sticky,
Yeah. I know exactly.
And it says, don't give up on something that you think about every day. So that little digital Mac sticky kind of kept me going, because I do that, I did think about it every day, and I did think it was an important story, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to give up.
You just kept going. You get no matter what. Did you write the script before you had the rights, or as an exercise, or did you wait?
I waited. But that I had written the Frankie Lyman script on spec, but I hadn't had the rights. And then as soon as I finished that, there was an announcement that Gregory Nava was going to do Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and then I had 120 pages of garbage. So I didn't want to make the same mistake of putting all this time and effort, and creativity into something that could go. But I did, in my head, I did have like, okay, this could be the first act, this could be the second act, right. This is the theme. These are the things I want to talk about. These are the scenes I want to have. So I did have it cooking, and I might have written, a 1-page outline or something, maybe.
Yeah. Something just to like, I don't want to lose this stuff.
Yeah, there was like, oh, that would be a good scene, and then I would maybe write it down. But I didn't hit fade in and then start writing. I didn't do that.
So all right, so now you've got the signature. You've got the rights.
Yeah.
You've never produced a movie before. You've never made a movie before.
That's right.
What is the next step? Like, how did you get this thing off the ground? Because you're now one of 1,000, if not 10,000 guys running around Hollywood with life rights or book rights or things like that. What made you able to, how did you get it off the ground? What made you stand above everybody else, at least just to get this thing going?
I shook the trees of friends of friends, of coworkers, and I remember talking to a woman who worked at Participant Films, because this seemed like it was up their alley because it had a social, environmental, component, and she was very blunt and impatient, and she was kind of like, you got rights, that's great, but it's not a script. It's not a commodity. It's something, but it's not something anything could. She was basically saying, like, turn those rights into a script, right. Or find a writer. So then I wrote the script in 6 weeks.
You wrote the whole script in 6 weeks? I mean, but you've been cooking on it for 2 years.
It was cooking. It was cooking. Yeah.
So you were cooking it for 2 years, but you actually wrote the draft that went out in 6 weeks?
First draft, 6 weeks. Maybe I wrote a bunch of revisions, but it wasn't that different than the first draft.
So the bulk of what the script was written in those 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. So now that you have the script, now you're a guy, a screenwriter who has a script, who has life rights. Again, 9,000 of those out there. Right. Now I'm just one of 50,000 people with a script, but I have the life rights, which actually, meant something. That actually had some currency. That, there's IP. Mm-hmm. It was a book. And then I own the rights. So like it sprinkled a little magic dust. Mm-hmm. on it, that I had the moxie and I had the entrepreneurship of getting the rights. So as a writer, though, that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show, because I wanted writers to understand the importance of what you've done with this project specifically, because you did what basically 1% of 1% of all screenwriters do, which is take control of their career and give themselves a better shot by going out and becoming a producer and or entrepreneur and going after life rights, going after IP, going after something that makes you stand out of the crowd. And that's why I'm kind of really examining your process and really hopefully inspiring somebody listening.
That was one of the smarter things I've done in the last few decades was being an entrepreneur / producer in terms of getting the rights.
So you got the rights, and then you're running around town. How did you? At what point did someone say, "Hey, let's make this"?
Well, I had the script and I had the rights, and then I had a friend who I met. Actually, this is one of the reasons, it's great to take classes and, meet, find comrades and collaborators. After the stand-up class, I took a sketch comedy class with Ann Beats, who actually passed quite recently. And she was one of the original female writers of SNL. The original SNL, the original 75 to 80. So she wrote the Noogie sketch, with Bill Murray and Gilda Radner. She had previously written for the National Lampoon. So I took a sketch class, and in that sketch class, a woman had taken the sketch class before me. We had stayed friends. So now this is 15 years later. She had a manager. And so I gave her Minamata. She gave it to her manager. She nagged her manager to read it. Her manager had once worked for a photography magazine in the 70s in New York City. So there was this kind of like, oh, I knew who, Eugene Smith was. I worked at this magazine, And then finally she read it, and then she loved it, and then I got signed by her, and then she was sending out the script.
And then how did Johnny Depp get involved?
She sent it to Johnny Depp's company. This is kind of a funny story. She sent it out, and she sent it to Johnny Depp's company, and they passed.
Okay.
They passed. Okay. Simple pass. They might have said they liked the writing. I don't remember. But then 9 months later, or 8 to 12 months later, I think it was under a year, she calls me on a Friday and says, "You're not going to believe this, but Johnny Depp's company has called. Maybe somebody new read it." She says, "They think it can win an Academy Award, and they want us to come in on Monday." What? What? That's what happened. So we were there on a Monday, and there was a guy, we had a meeting in a conference room. Now I've since found out what had happened. I've now pieced together these little threads.
So what happened?
It turned out he had read it months earlier. He had loved it. He brought it to his boss. His boss passed for whatever reasons. And then I think he had gotten a promotion, 8 months, 10 months later. And then he was told, I hope, apologies to Jason, I hope I'm getting the story correct. But he was told that, he could spearhead a project. And he said, "You know what? I can't stop thinking about the Minamata script," which goes to, the earlier thing. If you can't stop thinking about it, maybe it's something you should go after with all the love in your heart. And then she goes, "Well, if you can't stop thinking about it, maybe, take the lead." And then he called Amy, Amy called me, and then we were in the office on a Monday. So
at what point did Johnny read it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and piece together the puzzle on that. But maybe for a year and a half to 2 years, it was never talked about that he would star.
Okay.
They were just developing it as a production company. Now,
okay,
it's possible this was being groomed to be a project for Johnny. But I wasn't privy to those conversations, and it was never mentioned to me.
So I want again, people listening. I think there's a lesson here to be pointed out. So 9 months after they said no, they swing back and say, "We think this can win an Oscar.
Yes.
Can you come in on Monday?"
That's right.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. That is something that you can't plan for.
Nope.
You can't prepare for. There is such an element of luck in this industry that, and after talking to so many people over the years who have been at high levels in the industry, luck plays such a big part. But with that said, you had a script, you had life rights, you had done a lot of the legwork to get you to that place. So in other words, that phone call would have never come unless you have gone through those 2 years of over the glass trying to get the rights and all this time and effort trying to get this thing made. But because you did all that work at one point or another, literally luck just opened that door.
Yeah, a lot of things needed to fall into place at just the right time. I mean, I'm not going to discount the amazing luck that has befallen me and the kismet, because I took this sketch class, but this woman, Moira, she was in the sketch class, she was in the sketch class before my sketch class, but happened to go to our performance, who I met after the show. So the serendipity of her coming to my class, even though she wasn't, coming to the show, even though she wasn't in my class, and then us, staying in touch and remaining friends for 15 years.
It's a long con. It's a long con.
I was inadvertently playing the long game. And so then, she gets a manager. The manager worked at a photography magazine in the 1970s, had a personal interest in the subject matter, read the script, knew the person who ran Johnny Depp's company, gave it to Johnny Depp's company. And then there's other things that I found out much later was, Johnny Depp had come in the office because he was, off making pirate movies.
As one does.
He's not in the office every day. So he came in the office, and then, they have these meetings of, what's going, what are we developing? What are we looking at? What are we producing? What are we thinking about? And they said, well, Johnny, we have this script. It's based on a book. It's called Minamata. It's about the journey of this photographer named Eugene Smith. And apparently Depp goes, I know who Gene Smith is. He didn't say it to be a jerk. He was just saying, like, I'm a fan. You don't need to explain it to me. So it turned out Depp had been a fan of Gene Smith. He had known, he'd been a fan of the photography. He'd been, sort of aware of Gene Smith's reputation. Gene Smith was an eccentric. He was a tortured artist who drank a lot and did drugs and just, burned bridges. I think it was in the pantheon of people that Depp admires, your Hunter Thompson.
Yeah, I was about to say,
your Keith Richards, he just,
you're Jack Sparrows, if you will.
you're Jackson Pollock, he just fell into that kind of self-destructive, tortured artist. And in addition, Depp had been friends with a woman named Mary Ellen Mark, who was a documentarian who made a documentary about street kids in Seattle in the late 70s, early 80s. She later made it into a feature with Jeff Bridges. Do you remember this movie? Jeff, I forget what the movie was called. Jeff Bridges is in it. Edward Furlong plays his son. So then it was loosely based upon the documentary.
Oh God, I vaguely remember that movie.
She had made. So yeah, she was a photographer. She had taken classes from Eugene Smith in the late 60s, early 70s at the New School for Social Research, where I had gone to college. And she had told Depp these stories about Gene Smith.
So it's kind of like the universe was like building up this maximum point, this turning point, where all of these things would just come to a head, and you just this is the time.
This was a 52-year. This was a decade-long game. That's what this was.
That you had no idea you were a part of until later on.
I didn't.
All right, so I have to ask you. So there's been a lot of talk. Over the years, there's been a lot of talk about Johnny and how he works with his crew and how he works with the writing. What was it like producing a movie with Johnny Depp, especially something like this? How involved is he in the scripting process? Because I mean, he does take a character, and this is obviously based on someone real, but he does take a character and kind of go with it. I mean, he made the Pirates of the Caribbean. Without Johnny Depp, there is no Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't care what they do after, now that they're not going to have him back or anything. There is no Pirates of the Caribbean without Johnny Depp. So without Jack Sparrow. So how did he approach this process with you?
Depp was really. Depp put a lot of himself into the part and into the production of the movie. The movie was made. I think the budget was $11 million. Maybe it was $8.
It looks a lot more expensive.
It looks amazing. I mean,
it looks amazing.
The cinematography is made. Andrew did an amazing job.
Stunning, beautiful.
Richie Sakamoto did the music. I mean, like, if you made a list of like who should do the music, like Richie Sakamoto would be like top of that list.
Yeah, Bill Nye, and you had
Bill Nye. Bill Nye. So yeah, Depp. Again, Depp had this personal connection, to Gene Smith as an artist, as a person. So I mean, Depp. I mean, I don't want to say he did the movie for scale, but he did the movie for just a fraction of what he used to get to be a pirate.
Basically, lunch money for Jack Sparrow.
Yeah. We shot it in Serbia and Montenegro. We couldn't even afford to shoot it in Japan, unfortunately. I think, although they did shoot some plates in Japan. So Depp, I mean, this was something personal for Johnny. So yeah, I was on set. I'm in a scene in the movie. There's a scene in Life magazine. You might have seen the clip where he's like kind of walking around this conference table, lecturing us. Yeah, I'm at the table, but if you sneeze or blink, if you do one of those two things, you will miss me. But yeah, I mean, he looks like Gene Smith, with the beard, and he's got these age spots. And he was the same age as Smith was at the time. There's this world weariness that Smith had that Johnny just sort of has, being who Johnny is.
Yeah, of course.
At the age that Johnny is. And, he just embodied the part. And then on set, he was called Gene. He was called... the call sheet says Gene Smith as Gene Smith. He just took it really, really seriously.
So you're there watching him. I'm assuming you were there almost every day on set, or were you on set a lot?
I was there for a week. I was just there for a week in Serbia, so I only saw some scenes.
Okay, so when you're on the set and watching Johnny work, he's arguably one of the better actors of his generation, without question. What's it like seeing him work and also bringing your words to life?
It was the latter part of your question. It's sort of an out of body experience. I don't know how I've gotten to this point. I mean, things were not going well for me and my laundry business until I had $50.12 in the bank before they wired in the money or the movie. I was going to have to move back to my parents' house in Philadelphia. Like, things were not, my pivot into the laundry industry ended up not being a good one. So
I thought my pivot into the olive oil and vinegar business was rough.
Yeah, my last gamble was making a movie. It's weird that this worked out the way it did. But to your earlier point, Johnny Depp is amazing. That one scene took about 8.5 hours to shoot. The scene in Life magazine. I'm sitting at the table. the entire day, just watching him work, essentially. I'm sitting next to Bill Nye. He is to my right.
Mhm.
Katherine Jenkins, the opera singer and performer, who's the director's wife, is sitting across from me. And that scene, Depp is supposed to walk around the table and lecture us all. And where we start, 8:30 in the morning, and Depp is, okay, I'm sorry, I got to say this when I hit this mark. Okay, and he's got a long monologue. Maybe it's a 3.5 minute monologue. I don't remember, but he's got a lot to say in a short amount of time. And again, he's got to hit, he's got to hit
Marks.
Yeah, he's got to hit the marks, and the camera people are following him around, and the boom people. So in the beginning, it's like, oh no, he's kind of rough going, the first 30 minutes or hour, what's the line? Okay. But then the course of the day, I am watching, like, it's a masterclass. I am watching Johnny Depp, like, find the meaning in the words, like find the meaning behind the meaning. Like, I'm watching him connect with Bill Nye, who he knows,
obviously from the Pirates movies
for the last 20 years. Sorry.
Right.
I thought I had turned.
It's all good.
I thought I always watch the news shows, and they'll be interviewing on some CNN. I'm like, dude, turn off your IM. So I thought I had turned off.
It's all good.
I had turned
so he's there with Bill Nye.
Yeah, he's there with Bill Nye, who he's known for 20 years. But in the movie, Gene Smith obviously knows the editor of Life magazine for probably as long. So, like, there's these kind of mirroring, like, parallel relationships that are happening. So he's playing this bitter photographer who's angry at the Life. I was just, like, minutes before we shot, I don't know, Bill gave Johnny or Johnny gave Bill a book. It was like a nonfiction book. Oh, I thought you would really enjoy this. So I get to have this relationship. Then I'm watching this relationship play out with my words and the words of the script. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, there's history there. Like, there's real life history that they are sort of piggyback, they're mining from. It was kind of extraordinary.
That's amazing. Now,
it was amazing.
So let me ask you, do you have any advice for people who are adapting, screenwriters who are adapting a true story? What advice do you wish you would have known when you started adapting these kind of things? 'Cause that's a different art form than writing something from scratch.
Yeah, it's funny. Just this weekend, I taught a 1-day workshop, a 3-hour workshop called the Art of Adaptation. Mm-hmm. And I had about 2.5 hours of advice, and I think the first chunk of it was like, how to win over people who own the IP.
That's a class in itself.
It is. It's not easy. It's really not easy. It's easier now for me. I made this movie with Johnny Depp, and
oh yeah, the door's open a little bit wider. Yeah, like hi, I'm Steven Spielberg, and then that's all you need to say.
Well, it was even a little tougher, when, like, the movie hadn't been made yet, so it was just kind of theoretical. It was just like, movie, Johnny Depp, Manamana. People really couldn't, they couldn't watch it, they couldn't see it.
Sure.
It wasn't tangible. But now I can say, oh, you can look at it on iTunes and Amazon Prime and whatnot. Yeah. So part of it is, I think the first part of the class was, identifying IP where you could find it. It's everywhere. I mean,
there's thousands, tens of hundreds, thousands of books and comics and there's just so much.
There's 400,000 recordings that you could write a movie based on a song and use the actual song. So there's almost 500,000 songs that you can use the actual recordings of. Anything before 1926 in America. But interestingly, the UK and Canada have different public domain rules, which I found out about. Mm-hmm. That's it's like the death. It's like the life of the author plus 50 or 70 years. which is different than the US. So it's like whatever is published in Canada or the UK, that might, that stuff might be available 10 years before it's available domestic here.
But how does that work though? So like, I'll go over to Canada, buy the rights in Canada, and can you play it out here? You can't do that.
I don't know.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Well, I do know this. I have a friend who's a Broadway producer, and he's doing a musical of The Little Prince.
Yeah,
but he's only doing it in like Europe because
the rights are available.
Yeah, like you couldn't do it here. And you could, I think he's doing it in Hungary or Poland or something, or like
someplace that's like so specific that you can't get out of that.
No, but it's like he's got a full production and he can do it and he can perform these shows on that IP because he's found the loopholes of the countries that you can. So yeah, there's all these like very
interesting.
There's all these like very interesting like little like. Loopholes that you can sort of like slide through. Even in my research, you know about the Stephen King Dollar Baby thing?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Let everybody know. But yeah, the short film thing. Yeah, I've heard that forever, but go ahead.
He still does it. I thought, well, this is something he did like.
He still does it. So for everybody listening, Stephen King will allow you to license a short film that is not licensed by a major company or
a short story. A short story, excuse me. Of his
that can be turned into a short film. And you can't make money on it. You can't sell it. But the only prerequisite is you can send it, put it out to festivals, show it off as yourself. But he needs to get a copy of it so he can watch it.
That's right.
And there was a couple guys who got their starts like that. Frank Darabont.
I think Frank
Darabont started his whole journey with that. That's how he was able to license Shawshank Redemption, not for $1, obviously, but he had a relationship already with Stephen King, and then went on to The Green Mile and then Mist and all these other things that he did.
Oh my God, the Mist! The Mist gave me nightmares,
dude. I just had Thomas Jane on.
Oh wow.
You got to listen to that episode. It's so awesome. Like,
yeah. So you can go to stephenking.com /Dollar Baby, and then all the rules are right there. Yeah. So there's IP. And then in my class, I was breaking down like all the things that are inspired, but like there's so many things that are Frankenstein. Like,
my God,
Ex Machina. Frankenstein, like AI,
Shakespeare.
Oh my God, there's so many shows. Oh, they did the hip hop Othello. 10 Things I Hate About You. And then they did the meta Shakespeare. They did a Shakespeare play about a Shakespeare play.
Taming the Shrew. Midnight Summer Night's Love. There's so much IP out there that if you are a new writer wanting to get into the business, if you can come up with a unique twist on a obviously successful IP like a Shakespeare play, but just turn it and flip it around in a way that makes sense for you. It makes sense that something new and fresh, which is hard to do in those kind of IPs, but that's just an example. You can get the ball rolling on it. You can get your career off the ground. You can create a writing sample based on the structure of some of the greatest writers of all time.
You can take a Lovecraft story and
Dickens.
Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, there are lists, and I sent this out to my class. I'll forward it to you, that are just like they're websites that just keep track of like what's fresh in the public domain.
Oh, that's nice.
Like Eugene O'Neill stories, Hemingway novels. Like there's just all this stuff that is just like, what is Alien except it's a haunted house story in space, right? Like Outland is a Western in space. like just take something and put it in space.
Well, and it's a little bit more expensive to shoot stuff in space, but generally speaking, yes. Or you could just be a desolate post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, I mean, look, The Abyss is a haunted house story underwater.
In the water.
That's right.
Again, very difficult to shoot, but but yes, no, without question. And all those, there's always, I mean, look, and I've said this before, and I'm not the first to say this. The Fast and Furious is Point Break,
and it was based on an article,
right? So, but the Fast and Furious, no. But the Fast and Furious, the Fast and Furious first movie was based on an article, but the structure of the movie is Point Break.
Okay, right.
I mean, just look at it. Undercover cop, the girl. It's extreme infiltrating a secret. It's Point Break, point for point, beat for beat. You just go through it. There's videos on it on YouTube.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's just Point Break. It's all it is Point Break, and you're just like, I mean, can't believe. And now it's like some sort of James Bond, Frankenstein that they turned it into.
But to your point, it's like IP of IP. You know what I mean? Like it was.
But they used the structure. But they used the structure of another movie and completely. I don't know how they got away with it. To be honest with you, but things like that. There's always stories out there, and if you can attach, and in the world we live in today, IP is king. Everybody just wants IP. Everyone wants a best-selling book. Everybody wants something that they could hold their hat. They could that could give an executive an out if all goes wrong. So in other words, hey, we put this movie into production. It's based on a Shakespeare play. Who knew? They have to have something to escape hatch. If not, they don't take risks on original IP as much anymore, because if they fail, they're gone.
I mean, what is AI if it's not Pinocchio with robots? But I mean, there's even a blue fairy in it. I mean, and Jude Law is like a handsome robot Jiminy Cricket. I mean, you know what I mean? But I just read somebody's horror script. It took place in a single location. I found it on the Blacklist website, and then I got the guy on the phone, and I said, "Hey, what inspired this?" And he goes, "Well, this serial killer did this like one thing, Like, I don't know if you put people in the basement first. I forget what it was. It was something benign. I mean, not benign, but something like, oh my God, that's horrible. And I don't want to think about it. But it was just like, maybe it was the van. I don't know. It was something small, right? It was something small and not pedestrian, but and I said, listen, I'm gonna raise the value of your spec with 4 words. Okay, open up Final Draft or Highlander, whatever it is. Okay, right under your name. You doing this? Inspired by a true story.
Oh yeah.
It's not wrong. It was inspired by this one little thing that this terrible person did, one or two times. And I was like, dude, that's the inspiration for your script. And, people will be interested. It's got some magic dust on it, inspired by a true story.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And now you see that everywhere. Now everything's inspired by a true story, I look, again, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is to talk about IP, about how to get IP. And it's so important in today's world because you need something to make you stand out as a writer and as a filmmaker. And if something as simple as the Stephen King Dollar Baby thing, I mean, if you're coming up as a filmmaker and you're like, I don't have a story to tell. I'm like, go read one of the best authors of his generation, of the 20th century and 21st century, Stephen King. And how many short stories does he have? Hundreds?
And you can make it on your phone.
Which I've seen, by the way. By the way, I get pitched Stephen King projects all the time, like those short. Like I just made a Stephen King short film, and they're using Stephen King's name to try to open some doors.
Oh, I see.
They're like, oh, it's a new short film by Stephen King that he wrote it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm hip to the game already, brother.
I think that violates the Dollar Baby rules because he's got specific rules that you can't like go, oh, Stephen King authorized this or something, like, yeah.
No, yeah, but nowadays everybody knows about this. I mean, everybody in the business kind of knows about it, but it still opens. If you want to be a director and want to show off what you can do, why not in a Stephen King movie? I mean, it worked for Frank Darabont back in the 80s. I saw his Stephen King adaptation. It was called. Was it Shawshank? Or was it something? No. It wasn't Shawshank. It was. I think it was the one. It was called The Boogeyman. I think it was the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman script. I remember. I wanted to make that back in the day. I wanted to make the Boogeyman.
How was his short?
It was in the 80s, so it's, the technology wasn't that. It was shot on 35, or I think it was shot on 16, one of the two. It was good. It was well crafted. It was, he was a writer wanting to be a director, and then he pulled this obscure short film, which was the Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which nobody in there who's going to make a movie out of that short film. And then Frank actually filled it out and built out a feature based on that short film. And then Steven was so ecstatic about it. Then he's like, hey, I'm writing this thing called The Green Mile. And he was giving him the Green Mile episodes before anybody else. So he's like, Steven, I need to make this. So that was why it was right after Shawshank. He went right back to the prison and made Green Mile, which I still think is one of my favorite movies of all time as well. And then he went back with The Mist and so on. It's just, it's fascinating, but that's one of those success stories of someone using IP, and God bless Stephen King for doing it.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up short stories. Short stories are, they're a great place to mine from, because, they're not on everybody's mind. You know what I mean? They might be in a collection that's out of print,
right?
Who reads short story collections anymore? I mean, I don't remember the last time I read one, but, Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, they're making a movie. I think it's called Fawn, based on, oh my God, that was an amazing short story. I went back and I read the short story, but short stories, it's not on top of mind, right? You could get a famous author to, like Stephen King, to maybe license, allow you to, option the short story. An author of a short story might feel less, they might be less,
precious.
Less precious. That's what I was going to say, proprietary, but less precious about it's only 15 pages or 20 pages.
It's a short film. What are you going to do with it? You want to make a short film? Knock yourself out.
But versus I spent 10 years writing this novel. I don't want you to change a word. And then that way you have more, I can flesh it out. It can be more of your own, you can add stuff to it. So, if I had more time and more inclination, I would probably be going through short story collections.
So what are you working next, man? What are you working on next?
I have a Kubrick. I mentioned this before we got on the air. I have a Kubrick themed script. What else am I working on? They tend to be true stories. I'm reading some nonfiction books. One's about has to deal with UFOs. What else am I working on? I had reached out. There are some big properties that I'm swinging for the fences for. One's a rock band. Who has already had an adaptation of one of their things made. There's another rock artist of the 60s and 70s and 80s. I just want to make a movie of a chapter of his biography. Just one of the chapters. Not the whole thing. Because that has like a beginning and a middle and end. That's another thing I love about true stories and IP is that the structure is laid out for you. But we had somebody who came on the show who wrote the Motley Crue biopic for Netflix. Oh wow!
Yeah, and he'd been on it for 15 years, something like that. Like it took forever to get the proper situation.
I had the rock stars people bit for just a moment. There was a moment where all the conduits between me and the rock star, were all like, "Oh, he's interested." And now I don't know. It just kind of like they say in the dating parlance. I feel like I've gotten ghosted.
Right.
But now that Minamata is going to come out on DVD, I'm literally buying 20 copies of it, and I'm just going to mail it to the people that I want to get the IP from. Going, here's my movie. Feel free to watch it. If you like it, let's talk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you've got a heck of a calling card now. That's a really heck of a calling card to rock it out. But man, listen, your story has been so inspiring, man. It doesn't happen very often. Your first movie out of the gate is of such magnitude, such quality, and working with one of the biggest movie stars in the world. It's a pretty amazing story. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all my guests. What advice would you give a screenwriter trying to break into the business today?
Find some IP. I mean, not just for the magic dust that having some intellectual property.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
It eases the writing. It eases the pulling your hair out and trying to figure out, oh God, what's going to happen now? What's my character's motivation? Who's the bad guy? A lot of that is already laid out, in the.
Oh yeah, a lot of the heavy lifting's been done. If you're picking up somebody else's IP, I mean, it's a lot of heavy lifting's been done. You just now have to, as opposed to trying to build something, now you're taking things away, which is a lot easier. You're editing versus creating scenes. Like I have 400 scenes to choose from, but right. I really only got 27 I can actually put in the movie.
Unless you're adapting a short story, then it's about addition. It's addition. Right. Novels are about or about subtraction.
Right.
And often nonfiction is about addition. There are a lot of stuff I had to add. Mm-hmm. Minamata, the book is basically it's almost like a travelogue. It's and then it's it's kind of a photo essay.
But the meat is there. You're just seasoning.
I mean, there were some. I mean, there's some scenes and stuff, but I relied on Eileen. Gave me a lot of stories, and I relied on an 800-page Gene Smith biography, but there was a lot of filling, and I had to do it. So yeah, find some IP, and again, anything before 1926, depending on your country.
Don't make a movie about Mickey Mouse, though. That's not going to work.
I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but Steamboat Willie is almost in the public domain.
It's almost in the public domain, and I promise you, best of luck putting it out there, because I don't know how the mouse is gonna like.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that. I'm just being informative about the copyright deadline, but
it's coming. They'll probably extend it somehow again, I'm sure. It should have been public domain 20 years ago. But there's that. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Does this also include romantically? I don't know, or
whatever in life or the film business. Don't move to LA chasing a woman. That's probably a good one.
Actually, moving to LA is not a bad thing. I will never regret that. That was the impetus for this entire journey. I mean, I would still be living in my rent stabilized, apartment, on a fifth floor walk up, it's just, decomposing. And if I hadn't hit, that button on that dating website, in 2000, what advice is, what I'm learning now is just like, I'm older, and there was a period until quite recently I was looking for a full-time job, and that's not going to happen. I'm building the plane in midair.
I see that.
And sometimes you just have to, just like trust your gut. Like, oh, that's not for me. Like, I don't fit. Like, that's not going to work.
I know.
So like only a few months ago, I was like, oh, this is it. This is my life. Like, I'm like every day I am, hustling to make movies and, get rights and, charm the IP holders. It's like, man, you only have one life. Mm-hmm. Like, this is it. I mean, I'm not saying, leave your wife and leave your kid and, go out for a pack of cigarettes and never come back. I mean, you have to be responsible, but, you just have to carve your own path.
Very good advice. Now, what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
This sounds trite, but I don't mean it to be. Meet the Parents is in my top 3.
Meet the Parents.
And I talk about it in my I teach for the script and anatomy. I break there. I have to go back because they videotape the classes for people who've missed it. I have to go back because I expound. I go deep. Like, you've got that Kubrick book. I have talked about Meet the Parents in such granular, deep. There's so many things going on in that movie, in terms of theme, in terms of the theme behind the theme. And it's so deceptively simple. I once had a meeting with a producer who made a lot of big movies in the 80s. And every time I pitched something, he would be like, execution dependent. All right, okay. But
is it everything?
Was it what isn't? Alien. Okay, it's an alien in a thing. And there's this woman and she's trying to fight the execution dependent. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sure it would have to be on what the alien looked like, and if H.R. Geiger is making the alien. But Meet the Parents is so deceptively simple. A guy goes home to impress his girlfriend's parents. If you pitch that in a meeting, you get thrown out.
Right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That it's deceivingly simple, but yet complex.
And I also have this, it's not a conspiracy theory because it's also a movie about a Jewish person trying to marry into a WASP family. That's also one of the themes behind the themes. And again, it's not a conspiracy theory that I've thought of in the dark hours. It kind of comes up a few times in the movie.
Oh, more than a few times.
Oh, is this what you guys call a huppah?
I have nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?
Even in that scene, he gets asked to say the prayer over the meal.
Right.
Well, Jews pray over meals, don't they? Again, it's more than subtext. It's text.
So what are the other 2?
I haven't watched it in a long time, but Raging Bull really knocked me out when I was in my 20s and when I was in college. That's a hell of a movie.
Of course it is. It's a classic. And 3rd?
Again, I haven't watched it in a while. Social Network.
Oh God, that's a masterpiece. It's Quentin Tarantino said that was his favorite movie of the 2000s so far. Between 2000 and 2010.
I guess I would say Pulp Fiction too.
Well, yeah, I mean,
one of my prized possessions is I worked at Miramax for probably 72 hours.
Okay.
At a time when they still pasted things up on the art boards, and I befriended the art director. We're still friends. This is 25 years later, maybe longer. And I was able to get the original poster for Reservoir Dogs.
Oh wow!
The original, off the press for the first run of it. And also he sent me a Pulp Fiction poster.
Oh, beautiful.
Again, off the press for the first, when they first and I'm sure there's some code or some number maybe on the back that says, because
if things don't work out, eBay.
I do have a poster tube of posters that, in case of emergency break. Yeah.
David, man, it has been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Oh, Alex, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother, and continued success. And I appreciate you hopefully inspiring some screenwriters out there and some filmmakers out there to go out there and get some IP and make their dreams come true. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Super. Let's keep in touch.
I want to thank David so much for coming on the show and dropping his knowledge bombs on the tribe today. Thank you so much, David. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, including how to watch Minamata, please head over to the show notes at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/201. And if you haven't already, please head over to screenwritingpodcast.com, subscribe, and leave a good review for the show. It really, really helps us out a lot. Thank you again for listening, guys. As always, keep on writing no matter what. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.